The Satyogi enters the vortex of silence. Through renouncing the sin of labeling, it is labeling the self, labeling the other, labeling conditions, labeling phenomena with some agenda of like or dislike, good or bad. This kind of labeling that occurs in the mind petrifies the consciousness so that it becomes filled with those objectifications that have been produced by the labels. And the consciousness, through that act of profane limitation, has condemned itself to living in its own labeled hell realm. By renouncing the tendency to label, one decollapses the quantum wave function and enables the energies that were bound by the labeling to be liberated. The primordial label, of course, is the I thought itself. And that thought is a complex, not a single word, because once the ego has been installed with all of the labels that it has accumulated over a lifetime, labels that were imposed and projected into one's consciousness, labels that one created to defend against projections of others, labels that were based on anger and vengeance, jealousy and envy, fear and desire. All of those labels come up with the I thought, and they are distributed through the structure of the ego in all of its three levels of conscious, unconscious, and the censor that determines which of those labeled elements will control at a given moment one's conscious ability to perceive. And so because of the already accumulated labels, there are superego voices, there are ego fragments with their petrified desires, their obsolete intentions and agendas, and all of the subconscious fantasy structures that were repressed once they were labeled, because they were forbidden to be known, but not forbidden to act. And so the labels themselves take on an autonomous function of producing a paradigm of perception that captures the mind within the illusion of Maya. And by freeing the consciousness from believing in the labels or entertaining in labeling, the mind is enabled to let go of what has been produced by the labels, which are attachments and repulsions and identifications that prevent the serene, peaceful release of all defensiveness against the labels and against the fear of being labeled by another. Meditation is that act of self-liberation from the sin of labeling. Which enables the entry into the vortex. And the mind, the big mind, the unlabeled mind, recognizes that there is no world, there are only labels that produce the illusion of a world. The conscious mind of the ego won't believe that. It believes that first there is a world and then there are labels put on the objects in that world. It is actually the reverse. And once that is recognized, one understands that one's freedom depends upon releasing all of the labels that have been accumulated and remain in the subconscious layers of the ego, which can only be annihilated through the elimination of the I thought itself.